Sleep paralysis, the unnerving ordeal of waking up suddenly in the dead of night, temporarily unable to move a muscle or even speak. For some it happens nightly, and for others the experience involves more than just an inability to move, but comes with horrifying visions and sensations during their paralysis. One common thread can be found among the thousands of accounts of sleep paralysis. Many witness the same thing: the hag. Now, we quickly want to say that these things are not necessarily supernatural. But how can science explain when people see or feel the exact same way during episodes? And they are almost always terrifying. Here are 5 scary stories of encounters with the sleep paralysis hag and other unnerving creatures and experiences, all exclusive to this channel, and sent in by our awesome viewers. Hit those lights, sit back, enjoy, and don't let yourself doze off, because something might be waiting. Before we get started, we also wanted to let you all know that if you want to watch our full feature documentaries, you'll need to become patrons. Our next documentary will be on the life and death of Stanley Kubrick, and even mentioning the things we talk about in the documentary would probably make this video unsuitable for ads. He was an interesting man, and it really seems like he was putting secret messages in his movies. That'll be posted on Patreon in the next week or 2. After that, we have a Murderous Minds on Joseph Mengele, and then one on Jim Jones and the Jonestown Massacre. If you want to view them, you'll need to become a patron. But like we said last time, if you genuinely cannot afford the $2 per month, email us at info@top5s.co.uk and we will give you access for free. Now, let's get started. This story was sent in by Jessica Lamb and features all the classic descriptions of a hag/paralysis creature. Jess sleep paralysis on average once a month or so, and oftentimes can't even open her eyes. While on a few occasions, she's felt something climb into bed with her, breathing heavily into her ear. If she makes any small moves, then the feeling of something next to her will scurry away, only to then be sensed in the corner of the room staring at her. Then, like the thousands of stories, Jess feels a weight on her chest, as if something is sitting there, crushing her ribcage and pushing all the air from her lungs, all while staring into her face and breathing heavily. At this point, Jess often wakes up, only to find an empty room. Jess's sleep paralysis, as a child however, is even more unnerving, which is often the case. There would be times when her body was frozen, but she could open her eyes during an episode, only to witness a white creature in the corner of the room, hunched over, naked, and with a blurry, undefined, shiny pale face. The worst part, this thing would crawl around the edge of the room with clawed fingers extended, emitting a strange loud clicking sound. If Jess was able to blink, either the episode would play over again, or the creature would have moved to another part of the room in an instant, only to crawl to the side or end of her bed, or sometimes under it. When it went under her bed, Jess could feel its long nails jabbing and poking at the underside of her mattress and into her back. When this paralysis was finally over, Jess's back often tingled and felt sore, as if something really was poking at her. Sleep paralysis shadows. This story was sent in by Sarah from Serbia, and is of 2 particularly strange sleep paralysis episodes. They will be read from Sarah's perspective. I'm 25 now, but I've been experiencing sleep paralysis since I was very little. I've written 2 stories about my experiences. When I was a bit younger, I opened my eyes while I was in bed, and the whole room was red, like someone turned on a red light. I realised that I was in sleep paralysis and that I couldn't move. I could only move my eyes and breathe. The atmosphere was so creepy, I felt like there was a negative presence. Finally, I saw a tall black figure standing in front of my door. It was covered in some dark drapes with a hood, so I couldn't see its face. That material didn't let me see its real body, and it just stood there and watched me. It didn't feel like it was human. I wanted to escape, but I couldn't, because something was pressing me down to my bed. Nothing happened, but I knew that it was something bad. The next night, I had sleep paralysis again, but this time a woman with long curly ginger hair in a white dress was floating above me, and she gave me her hand. I tried to move, but I couldn't. I tried so hard to move that it hurt, but after a while I managed to raise my hand and give it to her. It felt right and so calming. After I woke up, I started thinking that maybe this was the shadow person from yesterday, and that it was in a different shape now. The Alp. Sent in by a man from Germany who wishes to remain anonymous, this sleep paralysis features a creature very similar to the hag, the Alp. His encounter happened around 4 or 5 years ago, just before moving house. This is a common occurrence, as sleep paralysis can be induced by stress, so the stress of moving home may well have triggered this. His sleep paralysis episodes would always start the same way. He would slowly wake up because of something on his bed. He never says anything, but felt the presence of something on the corner of his bed, but thought his dog came into his room. But then he realised he couldn't move, but could see the door was closed, so it couldn't have been the dog. It would only last a few minutes until he would somehow regain control over his body, and the episode ended right there and then. He thought the episodes could be caused by stress, as he was in his final year of school, just before getting access to university. However, he found out his brother also had sleep paralysis episodes at the same time he did. However, he wouldn't feel a presence, but would see a tall shadow figure in the corner of his room, staring at him with red eyes. One day, whilst having sleep paralysis, he managed to wiggle his toes and legs to break out of it, a common thing to do to break the cycle. But as he shook his leg, he swears it felt like it hit something sitting in the exact corner of his bed, that he always felt the presence. Upon hitting what he first believed was his dog, he got out of bed and turned the lights on to find that the door was still closed and nothing was in the room. Ever since that day, his sleep paralysis in that intensity has never returned. This is something that we have read about a few times, that when the person who is experiencing sleep paralysis actually makes physical contact with a figure who they feel has been watching them, then it seems to disappear and often not return. Story 2. After having a dream about playing hide and seek with some kids in a dark house, I realised that there was one more child with us. It was a girl, and she was a bit different from the others. She was a bit pale, almost see-through, but she acted like the others. The moment I realised that she was actually a ghost, she started screaming, and that woke me up from my dream. But I didn't actually wake up. I saw myself in my room and I couldn't move. I've realised that I was in sleep paralysis, and the girl was standing right next to me, watching me. I tried to stand up, but something grabbed my arms and threw me back into my bed. It happened a few times. I tried to scream, but I couldn't. I saw my hand raising because I desperately wanted to move, and it was thrown back to my bed. It felt like something else was doing that to me, and the creepy girl just watched. I constantly tried to scream so I could wake up. It hurts when you try to do that because it feels like you're pushing something heavy. When I finally woke up, I felt something let go of my arms. Screaming faces. This story was sent in by 22-year-old Angelique, who lived in Texas. It will be read from her perspective. I've had some very bad experiences with sleep paralysis a few years back. I was 16 when I first had my experience. Before then, I never knew of it or even heard of it. I was staying in a small house next to my parents' house by myself. I remember getting ready to go to sleep and having an uneasy feeling. At around 3 AM, I woke up to something heavy on my chest. I couldn't breathe right and I felt stuck. It was this huge black skeleton with black gross skin. I can still remember how cold its breath was on my skin. I was so scared. It made this ugly growling sound that didn't sound human or animal-like. That sound scared me. I remember hearing the growl in a nightmare I had when I was 8, but to hear it during sleep paralysis was horrifying. I snapped out of it and it disappeared. I cried so hard and called my godmother. It was my first time, so obviously I looked it up to see if anyone else had gone through it, and I was surprised to see how many similar stories there were. That night I couldn't go back to sleep, and the next day I went to school and went back home. It was nighttime again, and I was terrified. I ended up falling asleep, and of course it happened again. This time I fell asleep on my belly. When I opened my eyes, I could see my room, but couldn't see anything creepy. All of a sudden, I felt something extremely cold and bony wrap around my ankles. I can still remember the feeling of how long they were, The texture, it gives me chills. When I felt them wrap around my ankles, I saw myself moving. It was pulling my legs upward. I couldn't move my body, but I could barely move my pinky. I tried to hold on to my bed sheets as I was getting pulled up. Then all of a sudden, it was like it dropped me and I couldn't move again. A few days later, my father and mother got divorced and we were packing our things to move. It was 5 PM, there was still daylight, and I decided I would take a 15-minute nap before we went. I checked my phone and I remember the time said 5:02. So I closed my eyes and a minute later I couldn't breathe. I felt something wrap around my neck, but the craziest thing is I could move my legs and arms. It wasn't like the other sleep paralysis episodes. I kept trying to throw myself on the floor to get out of my position, but I couldn't. All of a sudden, I saw this weird black grey cloud or mist above my head, and in it I saw screaming faces. So many screaming faces. I started crying and finally was able to throw myself off my bed and breathe again. I took a deep gasp. Just remembering it makes my heart race. I didn't know how to explain what happened to me to others. I screamed stop and ran out of my house to my grandmother's house, crying, and told her what had happened. After that, we moved, and I didn't experience that anymore. I truly do not understand what happened the last time, but all of those events truly traumatized me. The closet. This story was sent in by Rodrigo, and will be read from his perspective. For as long as I can remember, I've had sleep paralysis. It used to happen to me as a small child in my old house. Eventually I came to overcome my sleep paralysis by relaxing my breathing and counting from 1 to 3. Nothing scary really ever happened till about a couple of months ago. For 5 consecutive nights, I've had a sleep paralysis dream that seemed to get worse each time. They went like this. The first night I had just finished playing some games with my friends and was heading to sleep. It was around 1 AM. I slept facing up with my closet being across the room to my left. Later I woke up, and what do you know, it's sleep paralysis. I can't move, can't shout, can't do anything. In my dream I can hear noises coming from my closet, little clicks and knocks. My closet was closed, which I could see from the corner of my eye. Eventually I woke up. I was scared, so I checked my closet and there was nothing, as expected. The next night I fell asleep around 12 and woke up in another sleep paralysis state a few hours after. This time it was a little different. I slept again facing up, but this time with the corner of my eye. I can see my closet slightly opening. I felt like I was always being watched, but I wasn't able to see anything. Once I was able to wake up, I saw that the closet door was closed, and I double checked to make sure there was nothing there. The next night, I once again fell asleep facing up as I usually do. My eyes opened, and I was paralyzed again. This time I could see my closet door was completely open. I couldn't look around, but I could feel something standing next to my bed watching me. I woke up and turned on the light and tried to go to sleep but couldn't. It was 7 AM by this point. The next night, my sleep paralysis dream didn't contain any figure standing anywhere. In this 4th segment of my sleep paralysis, my mum walks into the room and screams for my name. Now I don't know much about sleep paralysis or if this type of thing is possible, but I can vividly hear my mum screaming at me to wake up. As I woke up, my door was closed and I went to my mum's room and she was fast asleep. Then I proceeded to fall asleep again. My last dream still keeps me up at times, but this time I decided to sleep facing my wall with my back against the closet. In this final dream, I can hear my closet door slowly creak open. I hear thuds coming from my closet slowly approaching me. At first I faintly hear static. Eventually the thuds grew louder and so did the static. It was as if something was coming out to get me. Eventually the static screams were right in my ear, as if something was standing over. I don't know what these dreams mean, if they mean anything. It was a sleep paralysis nightmare mini-series that happened to me. I have not had sleep paralysis since those 5 consecutive dreams. So that's 5 terrifying sleep paralysis stories. Believe me, we didn't choose these stories because they all share the same descriptions and details, and for their shock factor. We had hundreds of these stories sent in over the span of an hour or so when we asked for all of you to share your stories of sleep paralysis. This is an incredibly common occurrence when one witnesses the hag and other terrors during sleep paralysis experiences. But why does this happen? Well, science is slowly starting to figure out why, and we've talked about it in a previous video, and we'll be discussing it in depth in an upcoming video. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you in the next video.